Hi there. A year ago, I finished my previous bullet journal and then I took a break of 1 year because we had a baby and I expected that I would not be able to keep up with a bullet journal. And that was probably accurate. But now I have a better idea of what I have time for, and I found myself really missing bullet journaling, especially being more mentally involved in the upcoming month. I found that this really helps me to remember appointments and birthdays. I also like how bullet journaling allows me to be a little bit creative in my day-to-day life. That being said, I think I went a bit overboard with my previous bullet journal. You can probably see it in my video here. I painted way too much and it was both too much for the journal and it was also too much to do this on a regular basis. My previous journal was a Leuchtturm 1917, the one called Bullet Journal Edition 2. And I really liked some of the features of it and disliked other features. This one is intended as a bullet journal, so it comes with some unique features like this grid guide inside of the cover. This comes in really handy when planning your pages. There are also little dots on each page at the sides and at the bottom to help you find the middle and the thirds of each page, which makes planning a lot quicker. The feature that I don't like is that this comes with wider page margins than you're used to. So you're basically missing one row and one column on each side. This bullet journal comes with 206 pages and the pages are 120 GSM. I found myself not needing all of these pages and had a lot to spare. My new journal is from a French stationery store called Mellow Days. They have watercolor dot grid journals called Reverie. I'm sorry, I don't speak French. The one I have is the burgundy one. It's a similar price point to the Leuchtturm journal. I had purchased a watercolor journal from Mellow Days before for a different project. This is a journal where I'm swatching all of my art supplies. And I figured if I like this paper, then I would buy another one to use as a bullet journal for 2026. Although this one might not be intended as a bullet journal because it has way fewer pages. There are 160 pages and they are 160 GSM. Interestingly enough, both journals have almost the exact width, even though the Reverie journal has fewer pages, but they are thicker than the Leuchtturm ones. And while I didn't need all of the pages in the Leuchtturm one, I found myself wishing for just a few more pages in the Reverie one. I understand that this would have made this journal way too heavy and probably too expensive though. Since I'm working with fewer pages, I planned my setup very carefully. My idea for this journal, to not go overboard with all the painting again, was that I would only paint cover pages for each month and a cover page for the journal, and everything else would be smaller decorations, if any. So instead of painting every single weekly page, I would only paint one cover page for the month. I also plan on stamping the crap out of this journal, which is why I've bought a number of stamps that you can see here. The one that I think will help me save the most time is the little calendar stamp here, because that really speeds up having to write out the monthly overview, which I do like to include on each weekly page. Because I know that I'm not going to be able to resist making the weekly pages colorful, I bought a bunch of ink pads in various colors. These are the Memento ink pads. They are waterproof, which is what I want, and the size is fairly small, but it's enough for what I need. On the left side of this page, I wrote down some ideas for the monthly covers. I have been to Japan several times and I also lived there for a year, so I still have a lot of pictures that I have wanted to paint for quite a while. I had meant to paint a few of these subjects in my 2024 journal, but I ran out of energy and motivation before I got to them. Now, if you really want to take a journal about Japan to the next level, then there are certain events or flowers or trees associated with each month. The most well-known example is probably the cherry blossoms for April. But as you can see here, I have no particular order for my paintings and none of them are directly connected to any season. I will just paint what I feel like painting. I also drew a lot of inspiration from this book called Traditional Colors of Japan for patterns, themes, or color combinations. You can see my German notes on the right side here. I planned with 52 weekly pages, which would be 104 pages. 12 cover pages for each month would take up 24 additional pages. Then I wanted an overview of 2026 and 27, and each one of these would take up 4 pages. A cover page for the year 2026 on a double spread, and 12 monthly overviews. I had planned this out to take up exactly all 160 pages. What I didn't realize is that I had 2 major miscalculations. For one, 2026 actually has 53 weeks instead of 52. The other one is that this journal has 2 pages that are sort of glued to the paper that's attached to the cover. I normally avoid working on these pages, but they're counted towards the 160 pages. So I actually only have 158 pages in this journal to work with if I'm only looking at double spreads. I realized this when I was writing down on each page what this page would be, and I came up 2 weeks short in December. I resolved this by deciding to paint the cover for 2026 on the first page, as well as trimming down my overviews for 26 and 27 by only giving them 2 pages each. I ended up with a single page to spare, which became the index page. Since this journal is almost entirely filled by the calendar part, I have no space for the things that bullet journalists would call collections, such as a reading log or a cleaning list. But I have moved the majority of these lists into another journal or into an app called Notion. So I'm personally fine with having this journal being only a calendar. If you find this journal interesting, you might want to plan very carefully how many pages you will need though. Since I didn't have any space to spare, I couldn't have a test page at the end of my new bullet journal where I'm testing out how the grid works or where I'm testing pens on the paper. Luckily, I was able to test this in the back of my second journal that I bought from the store. This made for a relatively fast setup of this journal though. Just the cover, the overview of 2026, and the index page. I haven't dared to do my year overview of 2027 yet. I think I would do that once I'm closer towards the end of this journal and I can be 100% sure that I will have enough pages left. 2026 is the year of the horse according to the Chinese and Japanese zodiac calendar. So I wanted to paint a horse, but at the same time I struggled to connect it to the theme of Japan. What came to my mind was a horse rider or samurai. And I've seen some amazing statues in Japan where the horses were incredibly detailed. In the end, I decided to paint this statue of Kusunoki Masashige. He was a military commander and samurai who lived from 1294 until 1336, and he is remembered as the ideal loyal samurai. This particular statue was finished in 1900, and it's located just outside the Imperial Palace in Tokyo. I have a few pictures of the statue, but mine are taken from a lower angle, so I decided to use an image by the Sumitomo Group on their website, because their pictures are taken at a better angle. The Sumitomo Group commissioned the statue, and if you want to know more about its creation, I will link an article from the website below. Although the statue is originally green and blue, I decided to paint it more of a red or rust color to tie it to the theme of Japan. The paints that I'm using here are Japanese watercolor paints from the brand Holbein. I think the ones that I'm using here are called Daybreak Orange and Lunar Eclipse Red. And then for the numbers 2026 I used Pampas Grass Yellow. These watercolors have two tones, but it's not too obvious on this paper. I've enjoyed playing with these paints recently. My overview for 2026, the one that was supposed to go over 4 pages, was shrunk down to 2 instead. I stamped all of the months and left some space below them to write down birthdays. Then I added a decorative pattern at the top. This wave pattern is very popular in Japan and it's called Segaiha, which literally means waves of the blue ocean. It's typically depicted in blue, but I decided to go with purple instead. I based this on one of the color combinations suggested in this book, Traditional Colors of Japan. I also took the remaining color palette as well as these decorative elements from the same book. These are common elements for women's kimono designs. We have a silk thread ball, which is a popular gift for girls, the chrysanthemum flower, which is the royal flower, a fan, and the lotus flower. I wasn't very careful when I painted these and a lot of paint spread into each other, so I used a golden pen to outline all of these elements. I will probably do my overview of 2027 at the back of the journal in a similar layout. Since I wanted to paint the cover for this month with watercolors, I was worried that the next page would warp a lot, so I decided to paint the monthly and weekly spreads before doing the cover. This is my monthly spread. I like having a lot of space here to write in birthdays and upcoming doctor appointments. But since I'm using watercolor paper, I also try to include watercolors on each page if possible. I don't have one single design that I prefer for my weekly spreads. I actually enjoy having a variety. The only thing that I continuously prefer is giving Saturday and Sunday as much space as the other days of the week. This means splitting the page into 8 blocks. I usually use the remaining block for a little calendar overview and to-do list. My next weekly spread follows the same idea, but this time the overview of the month is at the top and the to-do gets its own box. Next I wanted to do something different, so I went with a more circular design. I've done something like this in my previous bullet journal as well. I wanted to make this look similar to a sun, since the Japanese name for Japan literally means origin of the sun, and that is also where the name Land of the Rising Sun stems from. The Japanese royal family also claims to be descendants from the sun goddess Amaterasu. At the same time, I deliberately avoided making this look like the Japanese flag, the red sun, with sun rays, because that would be very close to the Japanese war flag, which carries a lot of negative connotations all throughout Asia for good reasons. My next spread ended up looking very plain and boring by comparison. I thought it would be nicer because my reference image was so nice, but I don't like how it turned out. I tried to make it nicer with a sticker here that I bought on Etsy, but I don't think it helped that much. I do like the next page again, especially how the watercolors appear on this page. I also like the way the current week is indicated. I painted this little line first and then stamped over it. For the cover page for January, I decided to start with the very subject that motivated me to make a journal themed around Japan. This is a shrine in Fujinomiya, which is a city located at the foot of Mount Fuji. There is a lovely shrine close to the train station called Fujisan Hongu Sengen Taisha. The shrine was first built to appease the spirit of the mountain and pray for an end to its volcanic activities. During the Edo period, it became the place where pilgrims to the mountain would purify themselves before they ascend. It is included in the World Heritage Site designation for Mount Fuji. I visited this shrine with my oldest brother, my cousin and my husband in 2018, and I have a picture of my brother standing next to this little shrine here, which is displayed in our apartment. I look at it every day, thinking to myself that I should paint it one day, and I figured this would be a great start to this journal. I painted this shrine from front to back, which is an unusual order for watercolor painting, but I wasn't quite sure what to do with the background. I painted the background green and I hope it looks like shrubbery and bushes. I'm really bad at painting this. This paper allows for easy lifting, which was a problem sometimes when painting the background because the areas of the shrine started leaking into it and I had to do some cleanup at the end, but I like the way it turned out. I hope you enjoyed this look at my new journal. Are you doing any bullet journaling for 2026? What is your preferred page layout? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye.